the station where our veterans' voices are heard. MBR Talk.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. Welcome, Quack.
Program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
There it is. You tuned into the Farron Dozier Show on nbradio.us, Tech Talk Edition, and Live Sports. Catch me here Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, only on nbradio.us. Shout out. How did I do? Was that a good take? That might work. All right, welcome to another episode of the Farron Dozier Show right here on MB Radio, the station that's giving veterans a voice. I happen to be one of those veterans. I'm blessed to be here to share just things that our veteran community have gone through, their life experience before, during, and after service. So today I'm not going to be too long with you today. I know I've had a couple of episodes that have been an hour and 45 minutes, but today I'm Han Solo today, and so I'm just here to just keep you updated and share some more experiences with you from my own personal life so that you may be able to discover something for yourself where you are in your life as a veteran or first responder or just as a person, because at the end of the day we are not different. We're not different. Before I became a veteran, I was a person first. I'm a human being first, right? We all are human beings first. And then we take on these identities that we give ourselves most of the time. And some of those identities aren't really empowering. A lot of those identities are disempowering to us, but yet we wear them like a badge of honor. And so today we're just going to get into some of the conversations of what I'm up to. I created this episode again, just thinking about, no guest today. What does Farron have to say about Farron? And so we're going to do that. Hopefully within an hour, we'll knock this out. And I pray that you just hear something for yourself, that you may, I'm not even here to inspire you. See, there's conversations in the world, and we like to use words like motivate people and inspire people. I'm not here to do none of that for you. We got to have another type of conversation before you can be inspired, right? We got to have a conversation where we can tell the truth to ourselves first. Because no matter what I say or what I do inspires you to do what, you still got to be willing to take that action. It may sound good in the moment, but then what is that? What is that gets in the way that when we get inspired by something that we hear, and we're like, yeah, we should take it on. I should do this. I should do that. And then 2 hours later or 2 weeks later, you're back to that same old conversation to yourself about what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Why am I born? What is this? What am I responsible for? Like, we all have these kind of conversations to ourselves, men and women. So for our ladies, you're not different. You're not different as a human being. We all have the same worries. We all have the same concerns about life, right? Male or female. So I want to get started, play these PSAs, and then I got some visuals for you today. And then we'll just kind of go through some of the things that I'm up to. It will be pertaining to the title of one of my identities that I have been resisting for a while. And I've begun to accept that identity because I know that these conversations are important, and I get to create this conversation of how I want. It doesn't have to look like anybody else's talks. It doesn't have to be about how everybody else talks. This is about how Farron delivers his messages and how Farron would like to share his messages for those that are willing. Got to be willing, right? You got to be willing to listen and apply the conversation to your life. And those of you that don't, then you don't. But at least you've heard something, and maybe that seed is planted where you get to one day examine your behavior or examine your tone or discover your purpose. Yes, those are some of the seeds that we have inside of us. We have the fruit seed, the flower seeds, and the tree seeds. Each one of those, for myself, I discovered, plays a different role of who Farron is when Farron shows up. My behavior, my character, my tone, my voice, and then my purpose, my passions, my gifts. All that is protected by my character, right? So let's get right to it. This is Comigo. Shouts out to Comigo. I appreciate them for being a sponsor, an advertiser on the Farron Dozier show on MB radio. And this carries over actually from KCA radio, right? It is about our veterans. But again, sometimes we don't realize how we breathe could be enough to start to calm ourselves down. We say that, we know that, right? Take 10 deep breaths and yeah, but who does that unless you practice it, unless it becomes part of your character, your second nature? If not, then the breathing is the last thing you want to do. All right. So PSA by Comigo. And then, of course, my personal public service announcement that I was blessed to be created about sickle cell trait and my experience with sickle cell trait exertion. And then the other people in the cast, those are their personal stories too. So each person is actually sharing their personal story in their relationship to sickle cell trait. All right. We'll be right back with the Farron Dozier show on MB Radio. Hey, make sure you go get the app as well. Download the app. Also, you know what? mbradio.us. You can go to mbradio.us and you can watch the show right from the website page as well. So you got choices. You got ways you can watch. And if you want to watch the show afterwards, it will be on Spotify and YouTube and all the platforms that MB Radio provides these episodes on, and also on Roku TV, right? So you can go to the MB Radio platform on Roku TV and watch us on your big screen right in from your living room. All right. Again, wherever you are, I appreciate you for listening in, and I will be back here in a second to direct this conversation. What's up, MJ? Thank you for saying hello. It is evening time over here, just about. Thank you. Again, that's one of our broadcasters. Make sure you go check out all the broadcasters. When you go to the website, MB Radio, it has a list of the dates and the episode times. So you can go there, click around, watch an episode. We're all here sharing our voices, sharing our stories, sharing others' voices and stories. For me, it's really about the relatedness. I don't want you to understand me because I don't understand me. But you definitely can relate to me if you're willing to use your imagination and put yourself in a conversation of what would you do given these circumstances in this particular life that we're sharing from a veteran perspective, right? Because they say we were told that, civilians are not going to understand this. And I don't like to objectify you as a civilian, because I too was a civilian before. Again, I've taken on this identity. I gave my life to death for this flag, and I made it. So now I got to figure out my what's next, right? Because if you give your life to death and you don't die and you live, then that means you got some more work to do, right? So I can either be stuck in the past or I could create what God has for me next. And here we are in front of you today. Again, shouts out to my brothers and sisters who paid the ultimate price. And we are here to keep their lives alive in our conversations and share their stories and our stories combined. And again, hopefully you realize that you're not different from us. That is one of the main things that I want to disappear. I won't say we. I want to disappear is that identity of where we label one another and disconnect from each other because of the labels. You don't believe me? Check it out. We do it all the time. We objectify one another it's a survival skill, right? Like we need to be able to do that. But when you do that up against another human being is where it gets a little bit touchy, right? So there are things, yes, we have to objectify and label to, understand and get through this life with, but it's the moment that we objectify another human being is where that, my friend, gets the waters muddy, if I could say it that way. And so we start talking to each other based off of the labels that we've been taught from our environment, right? So if your environment teaches you to talk about a Black person with a particular context or a label, then that's how you reference Black people. If you reference Latin people in the context of what your environment taught you about Latin people, then you're going to objectify that person and label them and talk to them as such. Or if you focus on what the world has to say about people, then you talk to people in the context of what the world has to say, which is such a limiting conversation. It's such a limiting context because human beings, we can change, we can grow, we can develop, we can heal our mindsets and change our ways. We are not chairs, we are not tables. We are human beings, and we have a malleable brain that can grow and learn and develop. And if you think you know Farron, you don't know me at all, because I don't know me, right? And so that's the freedom. The freedom is to have a space where you can come and talk and share and be about your life and talk about the things that matter to you without being judged, without slander, without being embarrassed, without being ashamed, because those are some of the conversations we're going to have today. And my experiences around shame and embarrassment and disappointment that really I was responsible for. I could blame it on other people. I could blame it on other situations. But at the end of the day, Farron was the common denominator in all of my life's choices and decisions. And at some point, I had to not blame my past or myself. We're going to get there. All right. So PSA coming up right here. MJ, that put up MJ. What's up? Good evening. That's my peoples. All right. That means your purpose is awakening. Exactly. We want to awaken your purpose. Some people just don't feel fulfilled in life. I know. I've been there. I know what that feels like. I know what it tastes like. I know what the body sensations feel like when you don't feel like you have a purpose or you feel lost or stuck. It's a description, but we all feel some version of that. All right. I'm done talking because I got to play this PSA and then we'll come back right here. The Farron Dozier Show on MB Radio. Make sure you check me out at farrond.com for more information. Matter of fact, that's the site we're going to be talking from after this break.
Some of us still carry the burden of battle. It threatens to drown us in our everyday lives. In battle, we had our weapons and combat gear to keep us safe, to keep us confident. But when we returned home, we were not armed with weapons and gear to cope with our own minds. I was lucky to find my combat gear, my mental weapon, and it's called Calmago. Calmago is a drug-free device that allows you to achieve calm in less than 3 minutes in moments of anxiety, stress, anger, panic, or insomnia, not with medication, but rather by activating the parasympathetic nervous system through breathing regulation and multisensory stimulation. A recent study has shown that Calmago decreases PTSD and anxiety levels in veterans, helping those who are suffering and having a long-lasting effect. Visit Calmago.com to learn how you can get Calmago through the VA or with a special veterans discount code.
Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm blessed, my brother. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Hey, did you see the game last night?
Oh, that was a good game.
But did you see the shot?
I lost money from that shot.
Oh,
too,
man,
bro.
that shot was cold,
I
man.
hated it, but it was good. Damn. What's in those jeans?
You really want to know?
I do.
Exhaustion, muscle spasms, asthmatic issues, unexpected sickle cell trait crises.
Damn. Are you serious? When I was young, I found out I had sickle cell trait. My mom's told me, but I ain't have no knowledge of it. But when I got older, I had a child, and the doctor told me my daughter has sickle cell trait. You know the facts that both parents have sickle cell trait? There's a 50% chance the child may have the trait, and 25% chance the child may have the disease.
Hey, that's what's the count. Do you know that 2.5 million people in the United States have sickle cell trait? 300 million people globally? I didn't find out I had sickle cell trait until I was in the Army 10 years. Next thing you know, I had a sickle cell trait exertion site.
Sickle cell? I thought that was a black gene or something.
Nah, man, the Latin community is number 2. 1 out of 36,000 babies are being born with sickle cell disease. You could be Caucasian, Mediterranean, European. You gotta know your bloodline, man. There is an inherited gene in our community that has been forgotten. The name is sickle cell trait. WDCONSCT, also known as What's the Count, is out to bring awareness, education, and prevention to people all over the globe. Want more information? Call us now at 323-215-5384 or visit www.wdconsct.org. All right, welcome back to this episode of the Farron Dozier Show. We're talking about reconciliation and self-forgiveness. That is something that is near and dear and important to me from my experiences of what I've been through. And that was the path. Ultimately, if you look back at the root of where this all started from or where it all began, and you got to put it in a context of, the journey of it. There is the journey, and biblically it's reconciliation, and there's conversations about what reconciliation looks like, and then it's, for me, my part of that was the reconciliation of my own self-forgiveness, to forgive myself, right? Because you're supposed to, you got to love God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, your body, right? And then the second commandment that's connected to the first is you got to love yourself. So you got to love God and you got to love yourself, not your neighbor first. You got to love God first and then you second. Then that love allows you to love your neighbor with the same measure that you love yourself. And so a lot of times I found myself looking back, I can articulate to you how many times I caught myself pretending that I was okay, that I wasn't okay. Pretending that everything was fine when really it wasn't fine. There was a whole lot of other things going on about life. And I did not have any clue or insight that I could challenge the thoughts of my mind. I believed that everything that I thought was the truth because that's what my mind told me. And then I behaved as such. And yes, a lot of damage control in the last 15 years. But the self-forgiveness and acknowledging it has allowed me to, manage that and be responsible for my behavior, for my character flaws. But you got to be willing to look at those, right? A lot of people don't even want to look at their own character. We want to blame other people. So this conversation is not about blame. You may hear the different pieces of the journey that I've gone through to get to be in front of you today, to have this conversation and articulate it and share with you just some of the stories of where I've been and what I've been through. So I want to start with, like I said, let's give this thing some context. So the context of this conversation is Farron's story, my journey, life before, during, and after service, and the life before service. That takes us back all the way to as far as one can remember. I challenge you to go back and see how far do your memories go. When you think about your childhood and growing up in your environment, like what are those memories that are right there that you were, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh, I remember being 2 years old. It's funny that my mentor, Caldwell, remembers being born coming out of his mother's womb. He remembers seeing his mother cut the umbilical cord and saying to himself, don't cut me loose, because he wanted to be connected to his mother. Now, how does one have such a vivid memory about that? Maybe because that's part of his testimony, his journey, that he could be present to seeing himself and his mother cut the umbilical cord. That's his story. Mine goes back to 2 years old. I could take it back to 2. And the context for these conversations as I take this journey back with you is reconciliation and self-forgiveness. I went through a lot of these stories. They were vivid stories in my mind. They were pivotal. Some of these were core decisions that I made. And a lot of these decisions that I made altered my experience of myself and of life and became this defense mechanism and protective, experience of what the brain is created to do. That's what the brain is designed to do: keep us safe, keep us alive, and protect us. But sometimes that brain protects us to the point where it also hurts our experience of ourself. That spirit needs to be fed just like your soul needs to be fed. Right? If you believe that you're a spirit, not everybody has that same belief. So I'm going to bring up my website. This is, every time you hear me say, or you might see it on the social media, or you might see it in these shows, the FarronD.com website. I just made that short FarronD for my name. And on that website, I put a lot of the stuff that I'm up to. So it has somewhere to land. That's all. A lot of tabs. But I've cleaned it up as much as I could. So I want to share with you that website. And on that website, shouts out to Jessica. You can catch me on Beyond 2D on every second and fourth Tuesday. That's a great show that we talk about all the different topics in at least up to 4 episodes. She breaks those down into 4 episodes. We just have taken on choices and decisions. And we got one more episode of that. And I just realized that today we got one more episode of boundaries. So those are the next 2 episodes before we go into this next phase of conversations that we're scheduling. So yeah, so this is the FarronD.com. You see that SDEMG. That is something I want to have a company. If I create a business, that is the logo that I was working on. Looking for a brand that would cover everything that I want to talk about outside of my nonprofit work, right? So you want to have a for-profit business, you got to be able to separate the two from the nonprofit and the for-profit. So if I ever decide to use that, it is the Smith Dozier Entertainment Media Group. It covers some DNA talks, the Rhabdo talk. It covers my radio show talks, and it covers some of the videography stuff that I do. That's what that's going to be used for. And so she made this for me. I appreciate it. Breaks down all the different aspects of my life. They're speaking at church, the Revolution Radio show right there. That show is on hold right now, but those are the things that I do that she put in a video for me. Now I know how to do that, but I have recently discovered, in my grief, I lost some creativity, and so she helped me out with making that. I'm very grateful. So that's on the website. That's what you'll see when you go there, pop up. Across the top, of course, you will see the different tabs that I have listed that's most important right now. The home tab, which is this tab here, which just gives you just the basics of what I'm up to in the community. The Statesman, I like that Statesman title because I care about the next generation. I care about the youth and the children, and this is what reconciliation and self-forgiveness is about. Restoring relationships between that child and that parent has been my journey, and we'll talk about that in a second. But things I'm up to in the community, you could look at that and see right there. For the Love of Dogs, the Inland Empire Hounds, we are preparing for our season. That company is owned by EQ Athletics, and I am grateful to be a partner in this program. And so we are launching the Inland Empire Hounds in 2025, 2026 this year. And that's the campaign for the love of dogs. Shouts out to my dog, Daisy, that I had to put down in 2022. So this is my opportunity now, finally, to deal with that grief, to deal with those emotions around the loss of my dog. And I'm ready to take it on. And as I've been in the community sharing with people, even yesterday, I didn't realize that so many people have had to go through that same experience of putting down their dog, or the dog passing away, or whatever that experience is for that person, at the loss of that animal, that pet, that dog. People have a lot of experiences and stories And we want to be the platform that shares that in the San Bernardino County along with us on the Hounds, which is our mascot, a dog as a hound. And yeah, so that's what one of the main things I'm up to. If I had to tell you if there's anything that I'm worried about in the world right now, is that right there. I don't have any other worries or concerns about life except for making sure that this season gets off the ground. And I imagine that if I wasn't doing this campaign, then what would be the worry that filled that space, right? Because I can honestly tell you today, like I'm not worried about anything today, except if I had to say I'm have a concern or a worry, is making sure that this basketball team gets what they need to have a successful season and an opportunity to chase the ABA championship, which last year the Hounds were number 10 out of 150 teams. So Coach LG, you got to see that guy coach, man. He coaches like the conductor of an orchestra, and those players played their hearts out for him. They believed in the process, and again, they went 17-3. 17-3. When we picked them up, they were only had lost 2 games, and they were like 12-2. Right, so we had an opportunity to experience some of those wins, and then that last loss before the division championship. So other than that, yep. So you can go there. The iehounds.com is the major website. It's the main website. And you'll find everything that you need to know about the Inland Empire Hounds and what we're up to as far as this coming season. One of the other conversations that I have is called Shattered Thoughts. And this is basically, what we're talking about today is an opportunity to share with people who are interested in having a discussion about their views of life and their relationship with their parents and their children. That is a very important topic. People are, as parents, we love our children. We have concerns and worries for our children, and our children have worries, concerns for their parents. And sometimes they don't show up like that. Sometimes it doesn't come across as love. Sometimes it comes across as concern or worry, which is still from love once you get all that other stuff out of the way, right? So that I've done that talk. Shouts out to the Breakthrough Show Network. They allowed me to do that one there, but I did 3 other ones actually. I did 2 inspirational reads. I did a live in-person Shattered Thoughts. And then this one that we did in April, I wanted to have that one online to give people more of an opportunity to log in from different parts of the world. Because if I had it in the city, then only people in that area would, have an opportunity to come and be a part of that. But if you put it on the internet and put it in a conversation, so she created this beautiful room, the Shattered Thoughts, the meeting room. I now have a lobby over there, and I also have an office space, a virtual office at the Breakthrough Show Network. So make sure you go there and check that out. Look in on the link there, and you'll be able to click on, and you'll see my name, and then you can go through the different rooms and check it out, and maybe be a guest on one of the episodes with us. So that's the Shattered Thoughts. I'm actually going to keep doing this conversation here. This is one of my key conversations that I want to keep bringing to the community, especially I did one in person. The one in person I did was dedicated to veterans and the relationship between the veterans and their children, and the children back to that veteran father or mother, and what gets in the way. Because as a veteran, you're traveling all the time. You have to be gone, deployed, training. Sometimes that sense of belonging gets fractured between that parent and that child, or that child and that parent, and then there's a disconnect. Right? I can tell you from proof of my own life that when I was together with my family, I would disconnect from them like 2 weeks prior to me deploying or going to a class or a school or wherever I had to go that was going to be long for more than a couple of days, right? And so that disconnection, I didn't even notice that. I didn't even know in the midst of it. I didn't even know what it was until I was out and doing the work and realized that, oh, shoot, I can emotionally disconnect from people almost on a dime, maybe 2 nickels. Might not be a solid dime, but definitely on 2 nickels, I can disconnect from a human being easy because I've been trained to do that. And so I have to recognize that, because sometimes when you do that with people, they don't feel like you're connected or you love them or you care about them. And so for me, I have to be aware of that because that is a deep rooted emotional disconnection that I had before the military. Right. So that's why we talk about these conversations as children to parents and parents to children, because sometimes as parents, we forget the environment that we grew up and how we were treated and how we thought we were treated. Some of those, if you don't heal those areas, they just carry on through the next generation, and we pass those down to our children, and our children grow up in their own version of that same fractured or that same type of fractured thoughts that we had, but in their own version, because that's their life. That's not our life. So we breaking chains. In my mom's talk show, we breaking chains, and I had to break mine, and I've given my daughters an opportunity to start to break their chains as well, because definitely my life impacted their life, and I took responsibility for that to allow them to start to heal their own life so they can get their life back and take on the things that they want in life. All right, so that's the Shattered Thoughts. That's the artwork. Yeah, that's me. These right here, during my healing journey right here, I had to figure out for myself at 40 years old. I had to challenge my first 40 years of my life. That's how I said it. I had to challenge the first 40 years, because after I realized that a lot of stories that I had in my mind that was circling around in my subconscious mind, and the way that my subconscious mind talked to me so negatively, so disempowering, that I had to challenge those thoughts, because I realized when I did that they weren't the truth. They were my truth, but they wasn't the truth. And then when I gathered more information from my parents and my family and friends, and talking and sharing, exploring stories, there were other pieces of the puzzle that I didn't know was going on in the background, right? So sometimes we don't have the full story. And so what your brain is designed to do is it's designed to fill in the space, right? And usually the face that it fills up, spills over to a negative context. Then we blame ourselves. Why did my parents get divorced? Did I do something? Could I have been a better child? Or I got to pick which parent to live with. And so now I'm like, all of these different scenarios. If we don't have the information to fill in the blanks as with much truth as possible, then we will end up feeling or worrying about something totally different. All right. So again, I want to thank you for listening in. So what I had to do is I had to figure out my philosophy, right? Because we do live by principles. We live by certain principles in life, and you have to discover what those principles are, right? Because some of those principles we are live by are, again, they're corrupted principles, they're corrupted ideas, they're corrupted views. And so I had to go back at 40 years old to figure out what was Farron, what do I really believe in? Like, I had to challenge my beliefs. I had to start all over from scratch, because I just realized that I had a lot of information that just was not helping me in who I said I was in that moment today. And so by having the opportunity to do that in an environment that I learned, this education that I have to trust. So you got to find something that you trust in, right? So that's the first step. You got to be willing to do the work, and then you got to find the stuff that the education, the curriculum, and the beliefs that you're going to, challenge up against your old stuff with some new stuff. There are different philosophies and beliefs out there, and religions and relationships with whatever that is, and you get to pick. So I had to figure out what my new philosophy was, what my new ideology was, and my theology was. That's what I had to figure out. But before I do that, I'm going to play a PSA, because I need to take this phone call real quick. So I'm going to play a public service announcement with you, and I'm going to come back and get right back in this episode right here on the Farron Dozier Show. Shout us out, what's the count? Zetovia salve, made from natural and organic ingredients, good for inflammation, poor circulation, hemorrhoids, yeast infection, lip sores, dry coughs, eye pain, minor cuts and bruises, and ready to purchase at botanicaherbalco.com. 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 Do you remember studying sickle cell in biology class? What's the Count on Sickle Cell Trait Prevention is here to bring you awareness, education, and prevention conversations around the risk factors of this inherited gene. Visit wdconsct.org.
Muchos de nosotros nos vemos afectados por la enfermedad de células falciformes a diario y un número creciente simplemente no nos damos cuenta. Los impactos de esta enfermedad afectan a todas las personas y en especialmente a las personas de color y con antecedentes diversos. Estar en servicio conmigo y con los demás a medida que creamos una mayor conciencia sobre cómo identificar y dirigir el tratamiento de los rasgos de células falciformes y ayudar a las familias a saber cómo superar el trastorno de células falciformes.
Do you remember studying sickle cell in biology class? What's the Count on Sickle Cell Trait Prevention is here to bring you awareness, education, and prevention conversations around the risk factors of this inherited gene. Visit wdconsct.org.
See, when you have the ability to take a phone call from your child, you know, I had to make sure she's okay. Shouts out to Deja. All right. So as I'm sharing with this part right here, I had to challenge the first 40 years of my life. The space that I was in, life was over. When you're at the space of hopelessness and despair and disappointment and self-loathing, and the words come out of your mouth are something like mine was, why bother? Like, why am I here? Why bother? I'm nobody cares if I'm here or not. That's the space where the suicide ideations and the self-destruction conversations begin to settle. Hopelessness, disappointment, despair, self-loathing. What came out of my mouth was, why bother? And I had a few episodes of why bother. But in that personal development education that I got into, that I learned that I could have confidence in and trust in that philosophy, I discovered some things about myself that I was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, if I made those stories up and it's empty and meaningless, Ecclesiastics in the Bible talks about that. We sometimes we're chasing the wind and it's vanity, right? And so we live a lot of our life chasing the wind and in vanity and not experience being fulfilled. And so that was one of the things that I discovered in my new philosophy in that education. And so one of the things I heard there, they said that a plane in autopilot self-corrects. It's never on course. Live life like the auto-correcting system. I don't know who made that up, but I know that's where I heard it in that education, that was a share. And so when I looked at my own life with that, I'm like, okay, what does that look like? Oh, that looks like if a plane is in autopilot, self-corrects, that means that there is a program, a software that is inside of that plane's computer, that when that pilot puts that plane in autopilot, it's never on course. So every time that plane is drifting off, there's a software that corrects it. It auto corrects the plane to keep it in the direction that is it's programmed or designated to travel in. What kind of software is that? Right? And that was my education that I took, the personal development education. For me, that's landmark. Right. And so I've been in that education for 15 years. That study of the being of human beings showed me how important our human experience is. Yes, a lot of times after those disappointments and those upsets and those hurts and those shames, that we don't want to feel no more emotions. We don't want to experience no more of those pains. And we tell ourselves that. But the problem is, you don't file that pain in the back in the past. You file that pain in that fracture in the future. So now you're living into that future of that pain again, trying to avoid it, but you're always focused on it because you're trying not to experience it. Do you see that? Did you catch that? We don't file those fractures in our past. We file them in the future. And so if I file that hurt in the future, I'm always living to avoid feeling that hurt again. And that's why we walk around mentally exhausted for some, or a lack of energy, or your vitality, or your vibe. So now you got to get a vibe to try to feel like you're alive from a vibe. No. What is your experience of life? We're human beings, not human doings. So that was the philosophy that I had to get, and it works. I trust it. I believe it. It works. It's not going to save my soul, but it definitely softened my heart. It definitely opened up my subconscious mind to challenge itself with those thoughts and those behaviors, and to see that, oh, maybe I found some information in my subconscious mind that's corrupted and it's not the truth. That's transformation. When you experience that and you're able to let that go and create another way, another pattern to live from, yeah, that's power. That's freedom. That's self-expression. That's peace of mind. And so as I did that one got me good. I was cool, chilling. And then I went and I saw my ideology. I don't know why I'm having a hard time saying that one today. My ideology. I didn't do my voice exercise, my mouth exercises today. But my ideology I had to discover, because that education philosophy only deals with the experience of being human. What do you do with those thoughts, right? Those thoughts can pop up in a moment, and you can think a thought and think that thought is for real. And then your body can feel it, and you can feel that thought in your body, right? And then now you are behaving in life from a thought that is not even happening today, from a thought from the past, because we didn't follow that thought in the past. We followed that thought in the future. So it's always going to remind us to think about this to avoid that experience of our philosophy, right? So the thoughts are there. So then I had to figure out how do I get a hold of these thoughts? I learned to just be with them and recognize them, and I don't have to become my thoughts. So I learned I have feelings and emotions, and I don't have to become them. Oh, I have to become how I feel? No. I don't have to become my emotions? No. You mean I don't have to get frustrated with anybody? No. I don't have to feel disrespected by anybody? No. I don't have to blame anybody? No. No. Nobody can make you do anything that you don't already feel about yourself. So the cognitive behavior, the CBT, shouts out to the VA. That's where I got that education. The cognitive behavior classes. I was able to take a lot of these stories from the life of a series and put in that curriculum and unravel some of those thoughts, and realizing that those thoughts were not current thoughts. They were thoughts from the past. They were thoughts that were corrupted thoughts. They were thoughts that were trying to keep me safe, that just didn't work for me today, of who I wanted to be. There were thoughts of a child. There were 2-year-old thoughts. There were 5-year-old thoughts. There were 6-year-old thoughts. There were 14-year-old thoughts. They were 22-year-old thoughts. All the different ages that we cycle through, we hang on to some of those thoughts because they guide us, supposedly. So then that ideology became the CBT. I trust that. I put my life in there. And a lot of my stories that I wrote in my inspirational reads were exaggerated stories. That's why they're stories, because they're exaggerated. They weren't the truth about Farron life experience. And so I heard this phrase. In baseball, the umpire calls that pitch a ball or strike. No matter what the coach or the pitcher or the fans have to say, the fans say that pitch was, it doesn't mean anything until the umpire calls it. So again, in baseball, think about baseball. You got the pitcher, the catcher, and the umpire. The umpire calls that pitch a ball or strike. No matter what the coach or the pitcher or the fans say that pitch was, it doesn't mean anything until the umpire calls it. And I got that. I equate that to my cognitive behavior. So life doesn't mean anything until I give it meaning. Now, people can tell you what it means or what it should mean, and you can thank them, and you can look in your life and be like, okay, let me take a look if I want to make it mean that. Okay, no, I don't want to make it mean that, because you get to be the umpire of your life. And that's difficult, because sometimes we've given our own life meaning about ourselves that is disempowering, and it's a negative context. And so how do you talk to yourself? How do you think about yourself? That's your ideology. You might have to go find some new thoughts. You might have to go deal with those old thoughts and unravel them so you can be free from those old thoughts. So when they show up, because they may still show up, But when they show up and you put them in that curriculum and you dissect them and you challenge that thought, you realize that, oh, that's a thought from the past. That's an exaggerated thought. That's a habitual thought. I've been having that thought since I was 12 years old. That thought it does not work at 55. That was a 12-year-old thought. When you have that ability to have those tools, you see how the heart softens? Your subconscious mind gets to soften because you are now feeding it more information, more knowledge, more different understanding, and you get a chance to challenge those old thoughts. Shouts out to Terry. You get to challenge those old thoughts. So for me, I live in three categories: philosophy, ideology, and then my theology. My theology, that's the one that saves my soul. That's the one that's for my eternal life. And it also just verifies of who I get to be as a person, right? And so, yes, we grew up in different environments of religious and religions and all these conversations about God and Christ, and it ain't no J. There wasn't no J back in the day, and they rewrote the Bible and they changed it so they use it against us as blacks to control us. I mean, there's so much stuff about the word of God, and none of it's wrong, because I'm not even here to tell you what's wrong. Your truth will set you free. And then those that are free by the Son is free indeed. So you got to find your truth. So I had to go back 6 years ago. I had been in church all of my life. I walked away at 20 years old because it was too religious. It was too perfect, and I was 20 years old, man. I was 21. I'm like, I can't live that life. I still like my rap music. I didn't have a lot of issues back then, but I love my music. And I felt like, because the pastor was like, you can't listen to that rap music no more. You can't do this. You can't. And I'm like, man, I'm out then. I don't want to be lukewarm. Right. And so I learned all that stuff, and I was like, I'm out. 20 years gone, until I had a conversation with my mom one day. And I believe my baby sister was going to a Brian McKnight concert. And I asked my mom, hey, why does she get to go to a concert like that? My mom's like, what are you talking about? Yeah, if she's religious and we're religious, supposed to be religious people, why do we how can she go to a Brian McKnight concert? And my mom broke that chain for me, because I had it so corrupted. And she shared. And I understood that if I don't want that rap music in my life, if I don't want that music in my life anymore, then I go to God and I ask him to take it away from me. And as I pray and do the work around following him and believing in him, guess what happens? Those desires go away. And I also learned that, yeah, you can't control. If I go into the grocery store and they're playing a rap song, I got to leave the store? No. So then you learn that you can sanctify that music. So the more that I got into the word and understood and applied the word to my own life, guess what happened? A lot of that stuff started to diminish. And so I can listen to that music because that is a soundtrack to my life. And the music is attached to us. You can't run from it. But I do understand why some people have to cut it loose. Sometimes you got to go cold turkey with some of this stuff because it affects you. But I was able to transform my relationship to that music and sanctify it with the word of God and follow it up with what God has to say about that music. So I then understood the music. I understood what was going on. I know music is powerful and it is controlling, and it does mess with our emotions and our soul. It does. But I added my relationship with Christ. And so now I balance that out. And so the more I get in the word, the more it diminishes. And then I use it for my shows because it's a connector to people. Sometimes you got to meet people where they are. And it might be a song that connects you to that person. And then they tell you what that song means to them and how they could be stuck or suffering or depressed or hurt because of a song that reminds them of a loved one. I'm so glad that I was so free from the resentment and regrets of my dad's passing, because I couldn't even listen to the radio if I had any resentment or regrets with my dad. I would probably have to find a whole nother genre of music. I would be suffering. So sometimes even the resentment or the regrets or the feelings and emotions that we have connected to the music brings us down. So once I got into my theology, then I understood better of who Farron gets to be in Christ. And then so I'm not religious. I don't talk about religion. It is a relationship, and you've got to establish your own relationship. So I had to get a new philosophy, a new ideology, and a new theology. And all those seeds that my grandmother and my grandfather and my mom and dad had talked to me about and people shared, guess what? I went back to those seeds and I started to water them with the Holy Spirit, with the word. And I've grown tremendously in the last 6 years of my relationship with Christ. Those kingdom principles. And so this is a phrase that I heard around the theology. As much as we are told we are social beings in the human experience, the Spirit has an additional conversation about this walk that can be alone from man, but present with God. And because we're human beings, we're social beings, right? That's a natural. We want to be sense of belonging. That's why the sense of belonging is so important to us. That's why we get so hurt. That's why this whole ICE issue with the world today, because we're messing with people's sense of belonging that came to this country, illegally or illegal, legally, whichever way. But a lot of our families came here not by choice. So when we start telling the truth about us as people and stop labeling one another, then we see this is about a sense of belonging. People want to belong. As human beings, we want to belong. That child wants to belong to his family. But if that parent disappoints that child and doesn't get an opportunity to tell that parent, hey, you disappointed me, mom, dad, you disappointed me, then that child's going to break from that family and going to turn to his peers or her peers for love and acceptance. And then we all can attest that the peer age relationships are all trial and error. So then who am I turning to for love and acceptance when I don't think I can get it from my parents? I'm turning to my peers. And when that relationship breaks, then I'm lost. I have no belonging. So I'm susceptible to drugs, gangs, maybe joining the military, maybe political parties, maybe predators, pimps, or I might become a loner. And we have labels for people who hang out by themselves. You see how we do, people? It's in that fracture of that sense of belonging. So yes, we want to belong, but this walk with Christ is by yourself. So that theology, when I saw that, I was like, wow, that makes sense. We want to belong as human beings in our soul, but there's a space that we have to be by ourselves with this walk, with this relationship with Christ. And so you battle in your mind. And so the last 6 years, I had to do a lot of work. I had to just shut down a lot. I had to get out of relationships. I had to just go and just sit with Farron and figure out who I was and what God had to say who I was. And guess what? I was able to restore that for myself. So I love me if nobody loves me, right? But that's the work that we get to help our community, our people, our children, our adults, restore your self-love back to yourself. We look for interpersonal relationships, but it's really the intrapersonal, the one with yourself first. Remember, love God first with your heart, soul, mind, body, and then love yourself. That's the commandment. See, when Christ answered that question, he couldn't answer it with just one answer. That question required two answers. So sometimes in a conversation, somebody asks you a question, it may not just be one answer. So you got to love God with your soul, mind, body, spirit, everything. And then that next part is equal to the first part. Love yourself. Because I can only love you with the same measure that I love myself. So if I only love myself 80% and I don't love myself 20%, there's that 20% that I don't love about myself. I'm most likely my shield, my defense mechanisms that I'm walking around the world with is that 20%. I'm not showing you the 80% of love that I have for myself. my subconscious mind is going to put that 20% out in front. And if you speak to anything in that 20% about me that you say about me, I'm going to fight you. We might kill each other because of that's the part that you spoke to that I don't like about myself. So instead of saying I don't love myself, I had to figure out how much do I love myself? And I do love myself about 80%. I don't love myself 100%. I don't think anybody loves themselves 100%. I'm at 80. And that 20% that I don't like about myself, I work on it every day. And sometimes it gets in the way still. And then I have to acknowledge that it got in the way. See, that's a different person that acknowledges their behavior when it shows up. That asks people to forgive them and change. I mean, I didn't mean to say that to you. Let me take that back. Please forgive me. Let me say this again. This is what I meant to say. All right, because sometimes we just blurt stuff out of our mouth from natural responses, and we hurt people with what we say. We hurt ourselves just the same because why did I say that? I didn't mean to say that. And then you don't go back to that person, acknowledge it because you done drove off and left, and they're left with what you said, and you're left with what you said. Now they may have just took it and left, but now you're the one carrying that upset. It's with you. See, we don't realize that fracture lives with us. That's why I don't agree with karma. Because karma is me hoping that something happens to them. Who's carrying that? I'm carrying that thought. That person went about their life. And if we carry those thoughts, why do you think we're sick? It's not rocket science. That's why this episode is about reconciliation. It's about self-forgiveness. It's about the interpersonal relationship. That's the work that I had to do, that I could share with you authentically, and I got stories to tell you. 10 of them. But this is the basic that I had to get through before I could get to this point of, do I even want to be an author? Do I want to write I don't want to write no book. I didn't want to write a book, but I knew that there was something that I wanted to share. But I had to get to these parts of my life before that other piece. So I challenged the first 40 years of my life up against new principles, new beliefs, a new philosophy, a new ideology, and a new theology. Now that old stuff is still mixed in there. It's still in my heart, but guess what? Because I filled it with this new information, now I have more information to pull from. So when I want to react to something, my mind, my heart now says, okay, but what about this? Oh yeah, that's right. Or my spirit could speak to my mind. My spirit could speak to that seed of faith. My spirit could speak to that soul and say, hey, no, remember what God said about that? Oh yeah, that's right. We agree with that. We did agree with that, right? Yes, we did. Okay, so we're not going to act like that. We're not going to get mad. We're going to be patient with this person. I'm not going to get frustrated with you. I'm going to be kind to you because I have to be kind to myself, because guess what I discovered? I treated people crazy too. So that freedom gives you to be you, because I know how I was. So I can only imagine how other people are. So when you get to that point of your life and you experience being transformed, you experience transformation, you experience peace, you experience joy, you experience freedom, you chase that. I chase that. I don't got it all figured out, but I chase peace because I recognize who I was being, and I can only imagine. I used to have this saying too. I stopped using it, but I stopped saying it out loud. I still use it. That sometimes when I go places, right, and I see people's behavior and they're acting a fool or whatever, however I describe their character behavior, sometimes I remind myself that I'm the biggest a-hole in the room. And if I'm the biggest a-hole in the room, then there's nothing that you can do to me to make me mad or piss me off or treat me, because I know I could treat you bad just as bad, right? Because I know that I'm capable of that. So that humbles me, that when I could remind myself that, remember, you're the biggest a-hole in the room. And so that allows people to express themselves. And then when you are confident and who you are as a person, and somebody says something to you, then you get to hear them. And maybe that frustration is not even about Farron. Maybe it's about something that they're dealing with. Or maybe I remind them of somebody that did wrong to them. But I don't react to that. I can speak to that. Hey, what's going on? Is that about me or is that something else? And then people will tell you, oh no, man, it's not you. That's not about you. I'm dealing with something at work today. Like, but we walk around and we walk around waiting to be disrespected. We walk around waiting for chaos. Sometimes we don't even know who we are if we don't have a little bit of chaos. Sometimes people need chaos to feel alive. But that's not you, that's your mind. Because you've got chaos out in front of you and you're living into trying to avoid it. And when it shows up, you're ready to react to it. So that was me. Today, I had a new theology, philosophy, and ideology. And this is all on the website. This is all at farrond.com. That is one of my main. So what I did was when I got back in the church and I started to discover again who Farron is and what I'm up to, I realized that I have an experience of life and I have a activity of life. So again, I had to frame my life so that I could regain control because life was over. So I got an experience of life and I have an activity of life. And so part of the reason why I don't want to be an author is because of the titles. See, I dealt with identity crisis. My suicide ideations came from because of my identity in basketball and my identity in that uniform. So for some, like athletes, cops, police officers, firefighters, doctors, people that wear uniforms, sometimes our identity gets trapped in that badge or that camouflage outfit or the rank or the job title. And so I had an identity in basketball because that's how I made friends in junior high school. Because I changed schools a couple times. So the new school, I found friends playing basketball. So I became a basketball player. I played basketball. And then that identity changed to a soldier at 19. And then when my medical retirement happened, that I had no identity. I couldn't play basketball anymore because of my exertion with rhabdo and almost died from sickle cell trait. So I had that, and then I had a mental issue. And so I had a physical and mental. I had no outlet. Couldn't exercise anymore. That's why I got out of the service. That's why they put me out, because I could no longer be deployable or in the military. So my physical and then my mental suffered. And again, hopelessness, disappointment, despair, self-loathing. Why bother? So I had to do the work around that. That's the point. And so now today, I'm cool. You know, thoughts are there. I don't have to grab those thoughts, and I can grab them and take a look at them. And that takes nanoseconds. Do you understand that? Your brain is like a supercomputer. It's powerful. You can grab that thought and okay, that's not a real thought. That's an exaggerated thought. Okay, that's not today. Okay, cool. Who am I going to be right now? And so the activity of life is my sickle cell trait. Is me being this radio broadcaster, being on the air with you right now. That's my activity of life. That's my activity. Who I get to be when I show up. A broadcaster, a dad, a grandfather, an uncle. Those are the labels. Do I want to be an author today? If I show up in the lupus community, am I a lupus supporter? Am I talking with the children? Am I a child today in the mindset of a child so that I can connect with these children? Like, those are identities. And we could pretend. But those are identities. And I don't want another identity. That's my problem. I don't want another. My rank, Sergeant First Class, that's my identity. That's my title. I'm not a Mr. I don't write anything as Mr. Farron. I'm a sergeant first class. I earned that rank. Not everybody in the world can earn that rank. So yes, there is a sense of pride. There is a label there. Yes. 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 I'm a sergeant first class. I'm not a mister. There's misters in the military, officers. So I respect that because that's my environment. So I'm a sergeant first class. So that identity I had to re-embrace. I had to re-embrace that identity as a soldier because I was trying to get rid of it. I tried to let it go. It is ingrained. 24 years, it's ingrained. It ain't going nowhere. So I own it. I accept it. I embrace it. And if it gets out of hand, I take responsibility for it. And I own the impact of it on myself and other people. But to become an author, I just really wasn't into it. Just not really into being an author. So that got in the way of me even writing these inspirational reads because I wanted to write them. I wanted to produce them. I know they're important. I know I want to share them. But there was a part of me that was like, well, how can I do it without being labeled as an author? But then hear what I said. How can I do it? The question is, who do I get to be about being? See what I'm saying? It's not what I do. It's who I get to be. So that's the experience. I have to check the experience of myself about being an author. And my experience of being an author is not a good experience because it's a title. And the way that my perception of authors is, oh, go buy my book. And on page 25, it'll tell you that I wrote about blah, blah, blah. Like, that's not me. Yes, I have printed ones. That's not me. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be promoting my book. Oh, yeah. And then my book I wrote. No. Oh, go to chapter 25 and you'll see that I don't. That's not even natural for me. That's not even realistic. So I have to figure out who I want to be about these inspirational reads. And that has been my journey to the point where I've written 3 so far. Right? And so now I'm embracing the fact that, okay, maybe I may not be an author. Maybe I want to be a storyteller. Like what title do I want to give it that empowers me, that I don't feel like it's a label? It's something that I get to choose to be with it. And maybe it's a storyteller. I don't know. I don't have a label for it. All I know is that I've written these inspirational reads, the life of a series, and these are the testimonies that I discovered the last 15 years that no wonder Satan attacked me as a child, because these are the conversations that I get to share at church. These are my trials and tribulations that I was attacked with as a child. That no wonder Satan was trying to take me out, because he didn't want me to deliver this message that God gave me in my mother's womb. So when you understand that for yourself, then now your life shifts, right? So I've written the life of a 2-year-old, the life of a 5-year-old, and the life of an 8-year-old. I'm working on the life of a 6-year-old right now. That one's pretty much done. I don't have any. I'm trying to get some pictures from the 6-year-old era. I don't really have that many pictures. So that might only be like 5 pages. The reads are no more than like 10, 11 pages right now. So the life of an 11-year-old is coming up. I got that one. The life of the 14-year-old, the 23-year-old, the 36-year-old. Those are all, I got them pretty much situated. And then the life of the 40, and then the life of the 50. And so, yes, I produced those. They're out on Kindle. They're out on my website. And iOS or Windows, they're flip books. I got PDFs. I've been blessed to take that leap, right? But they just been sitting there because I didn't want to put that identity on. I don't want to be an author. No. But I'm good. I share them naturally. And that's what this episode is about. An opportunity to share these naturally. You can look at those on the site. The life of a 2-year-old. So what I did was I took those stories, because that's what I discovered in my philosophy of who I was being as a child and my experiences all the way up to that education. And then I started to look at the Word of God to see, okay, if I filter these stories through the Word, how do they come out in the word? And that's where I found that it aligns, which is my purpose and my passion and my gifts of my conversation to deliver these messages, right? And so the life of a 2-year-old are about virtues. And the virtues are the, like, patience is a virtue, right? Patience is also a kingdom. Patience is also a kingdom key. So patience is a virtue, and patience is a kingdom key. Why is patience a virtue? For me, I discovered that the virtues are the things that you've got to get. You got to get those deep in your heart. Like, you got to swim in the virtue of patience, right? Because we already have other stuff in the ocean of what we swim in our subconscious mind. Shame is in there, embarrassment, disappointment, frustration, upset. You're already swimming in those in your subconscious mind already. That's why when somebody does something to you, react with one of those things that you've been swimming in. See, because a fish doesn't know that it's wet. So if you lived in water and I gave you a towel to dry off, the towel wouldn't occur to you as to dry off with, because you live in the water. So you don't even recognize the virtues that you live from that might be corrupted. See, because the towel, when I hand you a towel, it's not just a towel. The towel is to be used by you to dry off. So you've got to be used by patience as a virtue to live from. That's the difference of virtues. And that one was my 2-year-old decision. Because there was a decision that I made about my mom at 2 years old with barely any language, that I was disconnected and disappointed in my mom. Disconnected. 2 years old with barely any language. And we laughed about it for years, but never knowing that was, I can remember in my mind. Those are stories that I remember 2 years. I can go as far as 2 years old, that story, that where I made that mean that my mom disconnected me, that she left me with my grandparents. And the disconnection from that transition from my mom at 2 years old to my grandparents, I'm now connected to my grandparents. And when my mom picked me up, I don't want to go with her. I want to be with mama, because the disconnection from my mom was there. But she just dropped me off because she had to go to work. And then my grandparents had this great idea to say, leave him here. Hey, you know what? You get up in the morning early, you drop him off, you pick him up, you go home, all that cycle. You know what? Leave him here. We'll take care of him while you get yourself situated. Perfect plan. That's what grandparents do, right? That's what they're supposed to do, help out. However, some of us are emotional people. And for me, that transition from being connected to my mom, from birth, from womb to birth to 2 years old, and now I'm disconnected from her and I'm living with my grandparents, that's a transition. For some people, that's an emotional fracture. 2 years old. The perception of my father, the 5-year-old decision, that's about patience, because I was not patient with my dad, because I felt like he didn't love me. So how do you treat people that you don't think that they love you? You're not patient with them. I treated my dad terribly for 32 years. No, 35 years, because I was 40 when I discovered that. So 35 years. That's patience. Reading with the ruler. That's a 6-year-old decision in second grade that I'm not going to read out loud. That was a decision that I made in kindergarten, because they teased me. They laughed at me because I was reading with a ruler, because my eyes wouldn't stay. And today it still does the same thing. That's what's wild, is when I try to read, I have to focus on the line that I'm reading, because my eyes will go to the next page, in the next row down. Like, I don't even know what that is, but I've had that since I was 6 years old, and it affected my reading ability. And so one day the kids in second grade, they laughed at me. And in that moment of the laughter, I said to myself, I'm never going to raise my hand again to read out loud, and I'm done. So I'm never going to raise my hand again, and I'm not going to read out loud. That was a 6-year-old. You know what I got? You know, I figured that one out 40 years later, because I was 46 when I discovered that one in my philosophy about who I was being as a person. Why do you think people say that? Oh, I don't like public speaking. Well, maybe because they've been embarrassed as a child in a classroom or somebody embarrassed them. Would you want to stand in front of people? Of course not. Well, mine was I was never going to raise my hand again. And I'm never going to read out loud. And I was 46 when I discovered that. I was already out the service. So then I had to look back in my life and see, how did that affect my development as a person? Well, there I could see the fracture toward my daughters, because I never did read the stories to them. I never did use my voice to make the characters to read the bedtime stories. No, we had a VCR and a VHS, and she had a rewinder, and she was 2 years old, and she could take that. She could choose her video that she wanted to watch, rewind it, take the other one out. Like, she had the whole routine at 2 years old. And I'm not proud of that. I'm proud of it that she was able to do that at 2 years old. But the fracture was, how come I didn't have the space to go and read to her a bedtime story? So I had to call my daughters and ask them to forgive me for not reading to them as a father. And guess what? It didn't even, if they had nothing connected to that. I carried that. The self-forgiveness. I had to get free from that for myself by acknowledging it to my daughters. Now, for them, they said it wasn't a big deal. But for me to discover that, oh, that hurt. The latchkey kid of 1978. Whew. So the 5-year-old was a core decision about my dad. I can tell you that. That's a core. But they said we make 3 decisions. One about the mom, one about our dad, and one about our peers. And then all those in between are just additional evidence of why we're embarrassed and avoiding embarrassment, disappointment, and shame. All right. So the latchkey kid of 1978 was a core decision about my mom. That's where the whole abandonment thing. Because remember, I had the 2-year-old one already about my mom, right? I was already living in that space from being disconnected with my mom. Already in that space at 2. And then my mom came and picked me up from my grandparents when she got herself together and got married to my middle sister's dad. Of course, we're a new family. We're a blended family. I got a baby sister coming. Well, let's go get Farron and bring him home. Well, guess what? There's that transition. Now I go from a house that has a bunch of people in it, my uncles and my aunt, and everybody's growing up, and my friends in the neighborhood that I've grew up from 2 years old to 8 years old. That's where all of my friends are. They're there, not at the new apartment. I'm a stranger at the new apartment now. I'm the new kid I'm the new kid in town. There's a song, "New Kid in Town." I was a new kid, so here I am, transition, uprooted out of that environment, back to live with my mom and my stepfather and my baby sister, and now in an apartment that there's no one there. That's the times, though. That was the times. A lot of us grew up as latchkey children. Maybe you don't label yourself as that, but there is a conversation about the latchkey kid environment, and there are some impacts on us as latchkey kids in that era, right? Emotional and physical. So that was my transition. So here I am. I'm now coming to an apartment by myself at 8 years old, walking to school by myself, coming home by myself, going to the apartment by myself. Now, as an 8-year-old child, I had no perception of time. An 8-year-old has no perception of time for the most part. So yes, I knew I was by myself. I got the instructions. Don't go outside. Don't turn the oven on. Of course, not to burn the house down. Like all the don't. But all I heard my mom say that morning was, "I'm leaving you," as she gave me that key to the apartment. That's all I remember. And when I heard her say that, and I felt that pain in my gut, because remember, I'm already swimming in, I'm disconnected from her. Remember, from 2 years old, I'm already swimming in that, in the background of my subconscious mind. And then she says that. And then I say to myself, why did you come and get me? I could have stayed at mama's house. Why you bring me here? Now I gotta have this key around my neck, and I can't lose this key, because if I lose the key, I can't get in the apartment. If I can't get in the apartment, I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm gonna get a whooping, and bro, and so that whole world of the latchkey kid happened. And then I walked to school. And then can you think about how all day long. I'm looking, make sure I got the key on my neck, that the key didn't fall off my neck, that it's inside of my shirt, that I'm playing. I got to make sure the key. And then we had kangaroo shoes that had the zipper pocket. I don't know if you're that old, but we had the kangaroo shoes. So then I could take the key off my neck and put it in my shoe because I ain't going to lose my shoe, right? So the key is in my shoe, and I'm making sure that the pocket is still zipped and the flap is down. Like, do you understand the pressure that could come with that for an 8-year-old? And to be in his environment of trying to be friends and play and learn and grow and do all this life stuff. And now I'm responsible for this key. Now, again, that was just life the way it was. But that was an 8-year-old decision that I made, that my mom abandoned me, because that 90 minutes felt like 20 hours. When I came home from school, it felt like 20 hours. But it wasn't until 50 years old, 5 years ago, that I took that story completely. I discovered that at 40, but I didn't do the work around it until 50. Only because my dad, I reconciled with my father for those 8 years. I focused on my dad's relationship. So when my dad passed away 8 years later, we were good. No issues. And now what's next? Oh, my relationship with my mom. So that was at 50. So I took that CBT class. I was taking my personal development education classes, and I wanted to unravel that story. I wanted to be complete with my mom completely. I was tired. And shouts out to my mom because for her perseverance through this conversation, because on the side of it as a mother, by me telling the story that I was abandoned by my mom, how do you think my mom felt? How do you think my mom was feeling by me telling this story as a grown man, that I was abandoned at 8 years old by my mother? And I didn't notice, I didn't know that could have her feel something like a bad parent or embarrassed or ashamed, like whatever that, or how people would perceive her, that she had left me alone by myself. But that was my truth. That was my experience from 8. But I'm in my 30s and 40s and 50 and turning 50, still feeling like I was abandoned, still trying to unravel that. But I went to work at it. And I put those stories in those conversations of the personal development and through the CBT conversation. And guess what I was able to do? I was able to sit down one day and put my pen down, because the question was, is this story exaggerated? And I said, is it exaggerated? Let me check. So if I got out of school at 2:20, I think we got out of school at 2:20 in the 3rd grade. So I got out at 2:20. I said, if I lollygagged walking home from school, say I got in the house at 3 o'clock. So by the time I did all that, walked home, played with my friends on the way, whatever, stopped at the store, played some Pac-Man, whatever. Say it was 3 o'clock. So I get in the house at 3 o'clock. Oh, what's on TV at 3 o'clock back in the day? Well, I remember Good Times, Sanford and Son, The Jeffersons, All in the Family, What's Happening. Like, those were all the shows that came on in the afternoon and the evening time. So then as I picture, so then I had to visualize myself. So I visualized myself in the apartment. I visualized myself sitting on the floor watching TV. And then I could see in the background of my peripheral, my mom and everybody walking around the apartment. So then I said, well, wait a minute. If I'm watching TV at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and if those TV shows are on TV and my parents are walking around the house, then I wasn't by myself. Wait a minute. They were home. So if it's 3 o'clock, even if it was 4:30 when they got home, they were home at 4:30. So how long was I by myself? An hour? Okay, maybe 90 minutes. So even if I was home at 90 minutes, for 90 minutes, could I now at 50 years old say that I was abandoned by my mom and a latchkey kid at 8 years old? Now I'm 50. So I said, well, you know what? I can't. I can no longer say that I was abandoned. I could not honestly keep that as my truth to say that I was abandoned at 8 years old in the latchkey kid era, because my parents were home by 4:30. Even if it was 5 o'clock, even if it was 2 hours, they were home. So it wasn't 20 hours, it was 90 minutes. So then I had to tell the truth to myself after all those years that I was not abandoned. And I told my psychologist, and he says, you know what? The way you told that story, I would have called CPS on your mama back then, because the way you told your story about how you was abandoned, I would have called the good system on your mama. But for me at 50 to tell him that it was 90 minutes, man, all I could do was laugh. I wasn't even mad at myself. I laughed and I called my mom and told my mom, I figured it out. I'm good now. I'm good. We good. No, it's gone. It disappeared. Because I told the truth to myself that that was not the truth. It was my truth, but it wasn't the truth. And that's the life of an 8-year-old. So from 8 to 50, 42 years, and in my subconscious mind, I swam in that I was abandoned by my mom. And I had evidence. I had proof. I had stories. But those stories were made up by myself. No one told me those stories. I made those up, trying to survive the pain of an 8-year-old feeling like he was left alone by his mama. Not the truth. And so that's why this conversation is so important for us as people, because a lot of us carry these stories about the most two important people in our life. A lot of us carry these stories about the most important people in our life, with the two people as our mom and dad, whether they're in the house or not in the house. Those are the two most important people in our life. And yes, I had stepfather. I had another stepfather, but it was nothing like that biological father. And remember, I didn't restore that relationship with him until 40. So 35 years, I had my dad in my life, and I still was disconnected from him because I felt he didn't love me. And everything he did was to make up for because he didn't love me. He didn't pay child support to my mom, so he only bought me clothes to make up because he wasn't there because he didn't love me. Those were my stories to myself. And I never said those out loud to anybody. I never spoke that out of my mouth to anybody. Only to myself. That was my self-talk to myself, about my parents. The Bible conversation, Malachi 4 and 6, that we can return our hearts of our fathers back to our children, and the hearts of our children back to our fathers. Fathers is important. So yes, I had stepfathers. I had my grandfather who raised me. I had men in my life, but I always yearned for my biological father. That even when he was in my life, I treated him so bad until 40. And that's me right here. That's the life of a 5-year-old. That's my dad on the back. I took a picture of us. We went to a concert, musical downtown, and we were walking, and he had a cane, and so we were standing at the light, and I think I snapped that shadow. I'll put that on there. And then the rest are there. Those I'm writing the other ones there. The life of an 11-year-old, that's joy, because that was the walk of shame. The life of a 14-year-old is the day I gave up being vulnerable. That was a part of that. That was the defining factor of my relationship with women, because it was already broken with my mama. See, I didn't realize that when I said that my mom, I can't trust my mom when she abandoned me. My mom represented all women. So if I can't trust my mother, how can I trust another female? It's not happening. If it does, it's only temporary. It's a temporary void. No one gonna feel that. No woman could ever feel that void of me experiencing myself as being abandoned. No one. No woman was gonna feel that void. So no woman that I had a relationship with had a chance with me. Not one had a chance, because I was always gonna live from that. My mom abandoned me, and I was waiting for them to leave me. You see how that works? If I can't trust my mom, I'm not gonna trust my girlfriend or my wife, because one day my mind's going to remember that my mom left me. So then she's going to leave me. So then there's no trust. I'm 1 foot in and 1 foot out. I'm waiting for her to leave. And guess what? She's going to leave because of how I start treating her, because my behavior shuts down to protect myself from that pain of an 8-year-old. So then, of course, that girl is going to be pushed away, and she's going to eventually leave. Or I'm going to cheat on her because I'm going to go find somebody else because I'm waiting for her to leave. But I'm not a cheater. I'm trying to protect myself from being hurt. When she does leave, I don't have to feel that pain. But I'm a cheater by labels. But no one asked Farron, what's Farron dealing with? I'm just a cheater. I'm just a player. You got 3 girlfriends, so I don't know what you're talking about. I do? Were you talking to 3 people? Oh, but I'm not a player, though. Oh, no, you're a player. I am? But I'm not a player. Yeah, well, you're labeled as a player because you got 3 girlfriends. But I had 3 girlfriends because I'm waiting for the other 2 to find out about each other, because when they do, they definitely going to break up with me. You see the pattern? It's so ridiculous. I can laugh at it today, but when you're living in that in the moment, it's hurtful. It's hurtful. And then you look back when you discover your behavior, and you got to look back at the damage and all the people that you hurt along the way. The people that really probably loved me and that was never going to leave me, that I pushed them away. And then when I pushed them away, then my mind says, see, I told you she was going to leave you. See, there's your evidence. She's gone, right? Because I told you. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, huh? She did leave because she was going to leave, because like my mom, can't trust her. Can't trust women. Well, of course. Of course that's what it's going to look like. And I'm always going to be right. But what if she was never going to leave me? And I pushed her away. Because we don't think about that part. Or we do, but there's so much embarrassment and pride and shame or disappointment that now you can't even fix it. She's gone. But the void is still a void. And so you can get 20 women, and it's still going to be a void. Because that void is probably from your mom. A broken fracture, a wedge between you and your mother, a wedge between you and your father, as a male child or a female child. These are the things that we teach. This is the things that I talk about at church. Our opinions about these conversations. That day I gave up being vulnerable. Whoo! That was a breakup with the 14-year-old girl. That was the defining moment that I'm done with women. I'm done. I am not putting myself out there. I'm not going to be vulnerable, and I have to defend myself in relationships. And buddy, I'm a good defender. And I am not vulnerable. And you can only imagine how that plays out. And no wonder my relationships failed. No wonder my marriages failed. No wonder. No wonder I'm by myself. From a 14-year-old decision. And I'm 55, cleaning it up. The life of a 23-year-old. Faithfulness. That was the day I walked away from God. I walked away from God at 21, actually, but the 23-year-old is a more significant space in that time. But I walked away from God at 21. I found him again 6 years ago, 48, 49, when my dad died. I went to God because I didn't want to. When my dad died, we missed that humanness. So I always experience missing my dad. Today, there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about my dad. And it's been 6 years. However, I learned that I experienced missing my dad. So I had to change how I talked about my dad's passing. That was the first piece. If I say I miss my dad, it's like I put on this jacket of missing him, and it's this weight, and I can feel it's heavy, and I miss him, and all the emotions and the thoughts that go with it. But guess what? There are days that I don't miss him. There are days that I got to go back and be about Farron's life, and I don't miss him. And then sometimes I think it's wrong for me now. How come I don't miss him? Then you make yourself wrong because you're enjoying life and you don't miss the person that passed away that you love. And so you deal with your mind. That's the battle. That's the battle between the spirit and the mind. There's a real battle, a spiritual battle and a physical battle. So I learned in my development philosophy that I have feelings and emotions and I don't have to become them. So that means that when I experience missing my dad, I don't have to put it on and wear it. I can be with the feelings. I can be with them. I don't have to become the pain. I can experience the body sensations of missing my dad. I can experience it. And it may last 10 minutes. It may last 5 minutes. I may go play some music and cry. I may go out and laugh. But it's not all day. So I start saying I'm experiencing missing my dad right now. I go be with those feelings, and I listen and I sit and I let those feelings pass. They go through my body. They go down my legs. I feel the crippling sensation of not even wanting to get up because of how much I'm experiencing missing him. I'll play a song. I'll think about something that he said. And then guess what? It goes away. It goes away. And then I get to be back about my life because now I'm grandpa. Now it's my turn to be grandpa. But what I discovered was I started living my life like, how much time I got now? My dad died at 69. I'm 55. Am I going to die at 69? How old am I going to be when my grandson is older? Am I going to make it till he's in his 20s? How much time I got? My granddaughters, am I going to live to be 70? And I started living like that. My mind started to take over that. And I'm like, oh no, I do not want to live like that. I don't want to be 10 years from now crying, talking about, I miss my dad. I didn't want to be that guy. I seen that in people. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that person. And that's not wrong. I don't want to live like that. I don't want to live like the weight of my loss of my father. I didn't want to, I didn't want that. I had too much education. I had too much knowledge. I had too much understanding about the stuff that I had been dealing with up until he passed, 8 years. So no, I did not want to live like that. I know that these principles work. I know that the Bible principles work. I know that these development educations, they work. If you apply them to your life, they work. But you got to be willing to apply it to your life. And so I was willing from 40 to 48 to 49 when he passed. So I knew that. I know principles work. So I went to work at those principles. I took a grief class at the VA. I was the last one standing. It was 5 of us. It was myself, 2 Marines, and Navy, and the Air Force. We had most of the branches in there. And it was me and a Navy guy that the last 3 weeks. And he came that 3rd week, and we started talking about some grief. And He was living from a shipmate who committed suicide and a stepson who committed suicide. And he was like, I'm out. So I was the last one. And the guy was like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I got work to do. I'm not done yet. And so I continued to go the last 2 weeks, by myself, because I know that these principles work. And I wanted those keys. I wanted that knowledge so that I could apply that knowledge to when I started experiencing missing my dad. So I got more reinforcement tools. You got to be willing to do that work. You got to be willing to experience that pain again, because there's freedom on the other side of that pain. The body keeps the score. So when you are able to go through the process, especially if you can get it in a curriculum that takes you through the phases, you can experience that. Once you experience it through your body and let it go from your body, that thought and that emotion and that pain and that body sensation, it gets disconnected, because you tell the truth about where that feeling is coming from. You tell the truth about that thought. You tell the truth about how you feel, and now they're not connected. It may still be there, but now you recognize it. You don't react to it. That's the difference. The perfect morning, the life of a 36-year-old. That was the day that I collapsed from sickle cell trait exertion with rhabdomyolysis. I was 36 years old in the military at ANOC, working on my master sergeant rank. The perfect morning. My career ended. It was a career-ending injury that day. And I didn't have to sprint. I had to realize that I had to forgive myself for sprinting that day. Because I didn't have to. I had more than enough time to pass that exercise test with a decent score, a beyond passing score for the run. I had 17:21 to pass. I crossed the finish line at 16 minutes. I had 1 minute and 21 seconds still left when I turned that last curve. But I had to realize in my personal development class that I had to forgive myself for sprinting that day. And of course, life of a 40-year-old, that's the repentance and forgiveness. That's when I found it. That's when I discovered all this madness at 40. That's the journey right there at 40 years old. And then, of course, the last one is the life of a 50-year-old, and that's self-control. And that's what I've been practicing since I've been 50. So those are so I don't need to be an author to produce these reads. See what I'm saying? I don't have to be an author. I could just write them and be done with them and share them, and those that want to be a part of it can be a part of it. I'm gonna give them away. I'm not even trying to sell them. I really just want to have a meeting with people who want to work on these areas, and we can meet at a coffee shop or reserve a juice bar. Show up. I'll give you the inspirational read. You read it, and we just do a Q&A for an hour. The first two I did I thought it was gonna be an hour. They lasted 90 minutes. I did the life of a 5-year-old and the life of an 8-year-old. I gave them the links. We read the books, and people shared. And these women saw themselves in a male conversation. They could reflect and self-examine themselves with their own life experiences. So this is for men, women, children, because their experiences. We're all human beings. We have the similar experiences. So women walked away from these reads freedom from their own dad or their own boyfriend or husband. They could relate from a male perspective by me sharing my stories. I was surprised. I'm thinking that life of a 5-year-old about my son to father relationship is the male conversation. No, there was women there in the life of a 5-year-old. And when I drove off, I'm like, oh, shoot. And God reminded me, like, yeah, that's not just for men, my guy. That's for my people, male and female. Because we all have these childhood experiences. So that's what I wanted to share today as far as the show, this episode. Yeah, maybe I'm a storyteller. I don't know what whatever the label, whatever it comes across as, is what it is. I just know that these are important, and this is something that God has given me to deliver this message through these conversations, so that people can take a moment to self-examine themselves, to have the space to tell the truth to themselves first, not to me, to yourself first. And if you can relate, maybe you see something for yourself. Maybe that's all. That's the seed being planted by what I shared today. Or maybe I'm watering a seed that you've seen this for yourself, but you didn't know that that's what that looked like. Maybe that's your version of it. I'm going to end it with this. A lot of this, I could say 3 things at the root of all of these inspirational reads. There's 3. The Bible calls them strongholds. Right? We call them different things in the soul. You know, these are those fractures. But they are real fractures in life. And a lot of these 3 things are rooted in shame, disappointment, or embarrassment. Avoiding shame, avoiding disappointment, and avoiding embarrassment. And I live my life through these episodes avoiding shame, disappointment, or embarrassment at the end of the day. And those are real strongholds in the Bible. The first one was shame with Adam and Eve. If you read Genesis 3, the first stronghold is shame. Because as soon as they ate that fruit and Adam ate that fruit, they saw they were naked, they took off and they went to go cover themselves with some leaves. They was naked. They was shame, and then there was a little bit of blame, because he blamed when God found them. Where he knew where they was at. Adam blamed her. So we got shame and blame right there in the Bible. First 2. The shame, and then the fracture is the blame. So take a look. Take a look for yourself. Examine yourself up against shame, disappointment, and embarrassment. And these 10 reads are rooted. So imagine living with all 3 of those. Imagine we walk around living, avoiding shame, embarrassment, disappointment every day, in everything that we do. In every relationship that you're in, you're silently avoiding being embarrassed in that relationship, being shamed in that relationship, or being disappointed. And how do we have a relationship with one another with all that? One is enough. One is enough. Pick one. How can you be in a relationship with yourself and other people when you are living from shame, trying to avoid shame? You're not going to be self-expressed. You're not going to be comfortable. You're not going to have confidence. You're not going to have freedom to say something. You're not going to have vitality. No, you know what you're going to have? You're going to have resilience. I don't even like the word resilience. I'm going to have resilience. So I need to put this badge to be resilient so I can push through and bounce back. Yeah, but we don't bounce back. When things become not fun anymore, when those tasks, those jobs, those things that we picked up to do, and then now we don't want to do it no more because it ain't fun no more, we don't bounce back. It's hard for human beings to bounce back. We become resilient and push through. Well, the Bible says you got to become perseverance. So you could be resilient in your soul, or you want perseverance in your spirit. Because resilience, you're not bouncing back. Perseverance, you're going to push through that with the difficulties. But we want to be resilient. And the world uses resilience. I don't use that word anymore. There's no power in resilience. It's like I got to be this kind of way to try to get myself back up to do. No, just tell the truth. I don't want to do it no more. But see, what we don't want to deal with is the consequences of quitting, because that's either shame, embarrassment, or disappointment. Because somebody's going to be embarrassed. You might be embarrassed for quitting. You might disappoint people by quitting, and you might be shamed by quitting. You see how one is enough? Imagine living with all 3 at any given time. That's what those reads are about. There's right there. The 11-year-old was a walk of shame. embarrassed walking down the street with my dad, my stepfather, pushing a grocery cart. Because I was taught that you don't take the grocery carts from the grocery store. I grew up with my grandparents. Remember, I went to the grocery store with my grandpa and my grandma. You don't take that grocery cart. That grocery cart don't leave it don't leave the grocery store parking lot. Matter of fact, you push it back and you put it back in the little area where it goes. But this day, and 11 years old, my stepfather's he took the grocery cart home, and we're pushing it down the street because my mom's car broke down. That's the walk of shame. I said I will never be out with a good running car. 11. That was 11-year-old decision because I walking down that street. I'm embarrassed of all the cars driving by, looking at us push a grocery cart home. But that's all we had. That wasn't his fault. And my mom's car was only broke for 2 weeks. But I made a decision that I will never be without a good running car, and I will. Yeah, that was the main. I was embarrassed. I was shame. Actually, that was a walk of shame. I wasn't even embarrassed. I was shame. Oh, and we paid with food stamps. So he paid at the store with food stamps. That was one fracture. And then the grocery cart and no car. That was shame. 11 years old. You know what that did? That's why if you follow me, I had 5 cars and a motorcycle. That's why I ended up with 15 cars and not 15 real, but 5, 6 cars at a time. Buying cars. And in my depression, that's all I bought. I had 5 cars in 2 years in the heart of my depression because it filled a void that could never be filled. Because as soon as that car got a lot of miles on it, I got to get rid of it because I don't want it to break down on me. I lived from that, from 11. I've had so many cars that ain't funny. One day I'm gonna pull out all the keys. When I fix up my office, I'm gonna put all the keys on the wall of all the different cars. I think I got all the keys too that I've ever had. Brand new cars I only had for like 6 months. Nope. I had a brand new Nissan Maxima from January to March. 3 months. 3 months. And I woke up out of that depression like, why did I got this car? And got rid of it. Debt. Ridiculous. So I thank you for tuning in today. This episode of the Farron Dozier Show. FarronD.com if you want to, get some information. If you want to hit me up, I'm always available on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever you need. I'm open to answer your questions. This is my life work. This is the experience of life that I'm talking about. My activity is my sickle cell trait, the basketball stuff, the broadcasting. That's my activity. I get to do that, express myself over here. But who I am without any title is that others see their greatness through my self-expression and that others find their peace through their language. Because how we talk sometimes is a trap. Sometimes how we talk and describe our own life is our own trap. And I've experienced that. So thank you for your time today. I didn't think I was going to go here. Look at an hour and 53 minutes. Shouts out to Big Dre. Bags to Canvas. Catch me on Sunday nights at 8 p.m. on KCA Radio. And again, shouts out to MB Radio. I pray that this conversation helped in some areas. Again, reach out to me at Farron Dozier, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm always open to share. If you want me to come out and speak, we have a program, we have educations, we have a company called EQ Athletics. We're in elementary schools, middle schools. The whole basketball program is about this conversation. I'm gonna be talking to the men on my teams about these conversations so they can find their own freedom to their own language and start to heal their own relationship with their own parents and their families. That's reconciliation and that's self-forgiveness at its best. But you gotta be willing. If you're not willing to do the work, then you could just sit, you could just come and sit and listen. You ain't gotta say nothing. But if you're willing to do the work and apply these principles, that hammer in your toolbox, that hammer by itself is powerful, right? It's a hammer. We know that if you swing a hammer, you're doing something. It ain't gonna be pretty if you swing that hammer. But it's used to what? To drive nails in and nails out. But also, it has no power until it's used by you. That's what these principles are. The ideology, the philosophy, the theology, the word of God. You have to apply the word of God to your life. It's not a concept. If you look at it as a concept, you're going to be stuck in the concepts. But when you apply that word to your life and practice it, you practice being the fruit. You practice the virtues. You practice patience. You be patient. You don't do patience. You got to be those. You got to be the Beatitudes. You got to be that. When you swing that hammer in your hand, that's the hammer's being used by you. And that's the force that you bring. And that's the same force that you get to bring to these principles. It's the same force you bring into the upsets and frustrations of your life. You're living by some principle that's led by frustration. It's led by disappointment. And you're used by it. You're used by disrespect. It's not wrong, but you're used by that. So if you can be used by disrespect, why can't you be used by kindness? Oh, because the last time I was kind to somebody, they took advantage of me. Wait, what happened to the last time you disrespected somebody? We always worry about us being disrespected. What about the last time you disrespected somebody? You don't feel nothing with that? Or do you go home and you suffer in silence? Like, man, why do I act like that? Man, I couldn't even get it together today. And then you beat yourself up with that same disrespect. All right. I got to get out of here. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. Shout out to my moms. I love you. My daughters, my grandchildren, my friends, my family. I appreciate y'all for checking this out today and allow me to express myself. All right. Catch me on Sunday night. I'll be back here. I might not be here Wednesday. I might rerun this on Wednesday because might have to be looking for some schools in LA for some more contracts. So I might not be here on Wednesday, but God willing, see you on the other side. Shout out, what's the count?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Military Broadcast Radio. As we wrap up today's show, we want to remind you that the podcast of today's episode will be available right after we go off the air. So if you missed any part of the show or want to listen again, be sure to check it out. And remember, we're here to support and honor our veterans. Your stories and experiences matter, and we are committed to giving you a platform to share them. That's right. We're here to give our veterans a voice. So don't forget to catch the podcast and stay connected with us. Giving our veterans a voice.